Josh Barnard, one of the things, I was with you recently in San Antonio where we broadcast from the refugee camps all over the state of Texas, but particularly in San Antonio. What is changed? And just talk about the impact that Biden policies are having on the borders, the porous borders, and then how threatened we are by the fact that there's this new alert that Americans should be very careful because of the possibility of terrorist cells from Hamas, the Hezbollah, ISIS, who find themselves on American soil.
Yeah, I mean, look, the impact can't be understated. We're in a full-scale invasion. This is weaponized migration, as we've seen throughout history. Since you were down here, it has tripled down, frankly, in terms of volume. We got a huge slug, I'm guessing, on the order of 80 or 100,000 Venezuelans since you were down here, many of whom have been redistributed through those distribution centers further into the interior. But many have now actually stayed put here in San Antonio. Just the other day, a citizen journalist was arrested at the San Antonio International Airport on public property for criminal trespass, and all he was doing was filming them unloading these buses of illegals. So it has become a police state. Essentially, the republic has fallen in many ways, and I don't say that to be hyperbolic as much as to let people know that this is not anything less than a full-scale invasion, and we're at risk of losing our country.
Were you surprised that Governor Abbott endorsed Donald Trump, and why?
I'm not surprised. He's taken a ton of heat because he's a globalist and a very weak, controlled opposition type character. And, he's a political animal, so he's got to play the game. And I think really his only chance at maintaining power here in Texas, a state that's quickly turned purple from our own internal migration from California and stuff, even with that, he was going to be overthrown even by conservatives around here. So he had to do something, and jumping on the Trump train is the obvious maneuver, I think.
I tell you, the biggest news for me, Cash, is that Milei won, Massa conceded. In Argentina, they were trying. The mainstream media wanted to make us believe it was neck to neck. It could go either way, and it was a landslide. And he is as far to the right as I am.
Look, you're right, and we were talking about this at the top of the hour. These types of victories don't happen overnight. This has been something that has been building, as you said, in response to everything that is woke in whether it's America or Argentina or Brazil or Europe or England or elsewhere. All of these countries are seeing the dissemination of these policies that prioritize things that don't make sense or things that we don't believe in. We don't want crime. We want a secure border. We don't want fentanyl killing our youth. We want a legal immigration process. We want an economy where eggs don't cost $6 a dozen, and we want an economy where gasoline isn't through the roof. We also don't want to be in world wars. And they have now seen the policies that have all led us to this position. And Argentina was front and center last night with this monumental victory because they responded resoundingly by saying, we are done with this type of behavior. We are done with this type of two-tier system of justice. And we are done with the radical left-wing media dictating policies by headline. We want people in power who are going to put their citizens first.
Victoria, what scorecard would you give Speaker Mike Johnson today?
I think he's doing probably about a 7.5 to an 8 in my personal opinion. I think he's been able to kind of keep a lot of the people that opposed former Speaker McCarthy. I think he's been able to keep them happy to an extent. I think a little bit of frustration is being felt from conservatives kind of pushing the international priorities of the U.S. over putting Americans first. But I hope he kind of tunes into that and is able to have a little bit of a bigger focus on domestic policy and seeing, again, really, I think things that we've already talked about today, immigration, crime, I think those are issues that the Republican Party needs to focus on as we head into 2024. I think those are winning issues for the Republican Party, and I think there's as I've said on your show before, there's a number of people, Democrats and independents, that are kind of sick and tired of hearing these promises from Joe Biden and his allies on the left and even on the radical left, and they're willing to entertain somebody that's going to give them a change.
You know, Josh, I got to tell you, I was very shocked watching former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, making the case to impeach Biden, to move forward with the inquiry. He said he lied. He said he had no idea about his son's business dealings. That was a lie. He said he had no idea about the financial structure and how the money was channeled, which was a lie. And it seems as though that this new Speaker of the House is giving more attention to this, and it looks like this inquiry would go from inquiry to a full-blown impeachment hearings.
Yeah, well, interestingly, that seems to be more of a question for Cash. Like, I think that's right in his wheelhouse. I agree that the whole thing is bizarre, but while I got the floor here for a second, I wanted to go back to the migration issue and the fact that these folks are getting $2,200 a month. They've been invited here, and then they're paid to be here. And my biggest concern, and I'd like to get Cash's take on this as well, is what happens when the music stops? What happens when those payments stop? And we've now got 7, 8, 9 million dudes that literally came out of the prisons in Venezuela and other points, and the CCP trained operators on the ground, and the music stops. What happens?
Yeah, answer that, Cash. Then also answer about this renewed vigor toward Biden and impeachment.
Well, that's a great point. The monetary cost of this invasion through our border is astronomical. And we're just talking about the ones that are not criminals on paper as we see it. What about the known terrorists that have come into the country that Mayorkas and Wray finally admitted that they can't find dozens and dozens and dozens of them? My fear is those folks are going to collide with the other set of individuals that you just talked about when the money spigot runs out and say, we got money for you. We need you to do more crime. We need you to commit acts of terrorism. And the bad thing is they're well funded. They have patience, and it's going to lead to the degradation of our society. So our law enforcement needs to be completely revamped. And on the Speaker Johnson thing, I've known Mike Johnson for a while. Conservative, Christian man of faith. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met, but he has a lot on his plate. If you are a pro-Trump person, the release of the January 6 tapes alone makes Mike Johnson a savior and a hero. And if you are just pro-justice, as I am, you would think, I want all the evidence for all of America to see, and then they can make their decisions about January 6th. And in terms of the impeachment inquiry, look, we all know even if they impeach Joe Biden, he's never going to convict in the Senate. But the importance is the trial that takes place in the House of Representatives will allow the Republicans to utilize subpoena power, call witnesses, produce documents, and get this material out into the American bloodstream, the bank records, and everything that the mainstream media immediately disposes of just because the Republican majority in Congress has put it out. So there's a lot of value to it, but that is going to be a ton of work for them in Congress.
Cash, let me stay with you a minute. From a defense perspective, how significant is the issue of handling classified material, and what are the potential ramifications for national security?
Well, anytime classified material is gotten out, whether it's by accident or illegally, it hurts national security interests. Now, I'll be the first person to tell you, one of the government tricks of the trade is to overclassify information, to overclassify to cover up corruption. As the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, I was the guy that went in there and said to DOJ, hey, this is evidence of innocence against Michael Flynn. I don't care if you like him or dislike him or not. Why are we breaking the law by classifying it? We declassified it, and you know what happened. Those types of instances, they did the same thing during Russiagate, cripple our system and Americans' belief in our ability to classify what needs to be classified, what doesn't. And then when you have two presidents, essentially a president and a candidate for president, out there running for the office, and they're both essentially being charged or alleged to have held classified information, I think most of America is just kind of fed up with this process that DOJ has yet to definitively identify what is going on under the law. And to me, it's because of the two-tier system of justice. These cases will be handled differently. Joe Biden won't be charged, and Donald Trump has been charged, even though there's two different privileges that apply to a president versus a vice president.
Let me ask you, Victoria, I discuss the importance of data security in the corporate world and how it parallels with government classified information?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are two slightly different things, and I think that that has to be acknowledged. So, corporations, they have kind of a understanding that you have as a consumer. You know, you sign things that kind of waive away certain elements of your privacy whenever you interact really with any kind of service, right? Most of us don't read those terms of service, but they do exist, and that kind of expunges the corporation from certain sets of security that you might otherwise kind of think that you are entitled to, but you just want to check the box to move along and use whatever service you're signing up for. Now, with the government, that is, I think, made to be a little bit more in the open, and what we kind of have as, you know, consumers in a government sense, that is the citizens. You know, the government is obviously ran by our tax dollars. It is ran, you know, by a lot of bureaucrats, but also a lot of elected officials that put those bureaucrats into power. And so that's why I think there is a very unique distinction between government safety and security of secrets versus those that you can expect from the corporate world.
We'll come back with Cash, Victoria, and Josh. I'm Armstrong Williams. This is your Voice Your Future. Don't go away.